This conference will now be recorded.
Right. Now see, methods. Methods concept. Methods. See, in Java, we have two types of methods. One is standard methods, and then second one is user defined methods. Standard methods means the methods which are all coming along with Java. Once you install Java in your system, so whatever you are using like system.out.println, system.out.print, so all these are all the methods which are all coming along with the Java. So these are all the like standard methods. These are standard methods which are all using to implement our Java programs easily. The second one is user defined methods. The user defined methods is going to be implemented by, it is implementing by programmers. See, what is this method? Method means it's a collection of these statements. Method means it's a collection of these statements which is performing a specific task. Method means it's a collection of these statements which is performing a specific task. Now see, in your real time as a programmer, you are going to implement some thousands of lines of code. Right now, whatever we are implementing all the scenarios, we just created one class. Inside that there is a main method. Inside the main method we are writing it. Okay, but in the real-time point of view, you are not going to implement the entire project in the single method itself. In your real time, you may have to use the same task again and again in different places. So at that time, we cannot write the same code in another place. Okay, so the best approach to implement the program is whatever you are trying to implement the program, always divide your task into methods. whether it is a simple task or a complex task. Always divide your task into methods, and each method is performing a specific task, and each method is performing a specific task. And because of implementation of methods, your code readability will be improved, code maintenance will be reduced, and you can reduce the lengthy code, and you can call wherever and whenever. You can call wherever and whenever. Okay. Now, so how to implement these user defined methods? How to implement these user defined methods? We have four types of, we can implement in four types. One is method without arguments and no return type. Method without arguments and no return type. Method without arguments and no return type. And here method with arguments and no return type. And here method without arguments and return type. Method, arguments and return type. So we have four types of methods we can implement in our program. Whereas some of the guys, they call it as parameters also. Some of the guys, they call it as parameters also. Arguments are parameters. So method with arguments, no return type. Method without argument, no return type. With argument return type, without argument return type. So like this, depends upon our requirement, we can implement our four types of methods. So all the methods are implemented by programmers. So such type of methods are called user defined methods. So let us see. Right click. Let me implement a class called user defined methods. Let me implement a method called user defined methods. Right. Let's say I have implemented a method public void test add. Now in this case, you define a method like test add, and see method which contains return type. Right now, it is not returning any data type. So that's why we are specifying void. Void means nothing. It is not going to return any type. Now see, what is this public? In Java, we have 4 types of access modifiers: public, private, protected, and a default. We have 4 types of access modifiers are there in Java. So we will see what is the difference between each and everything. So after this topic, we will see the difference between each and every thing. So whenever you try to define a method, the method name and the return type, and depends upon your requirement, you may need to pass parameters. Now here, this method is zero argument. This method is without arguments and no return type. Let's say you can implement your logic inside that. So by default, everyone is implementing under main method so far. So depends upon your requirement, you may need to implement different methods. See, always divide your task in the form of methods and utilize it wherever and whenever. Int a is equal to 10, int b is equal to 20, int c is equal to a plus 2. Sum is equal to the output is stored in the variable called c, whereas a, b, c, all these are all the local variables. Whereas a, b, c are the local variables. So local variables means the scope of the variables is up to only this method. Now see, these variables you define inside the method. Once you come out of this method, the scope is gone. Once you come out of this method, the scope is gone. So this type of variables are called local variables. Okay. Now here, this one is method without parameters and no return type. I'm implementing another method, public void test multiplication. Now here, int a comma int b, int a comma int b. Now here, a and b are the parameters. So why we need to pass parameters? If you want to perform a task with different inputs, so whatever we are providing the inputs, based on that, if you want to perform a task, we are going to use this parameters. Suppose if you are going to use something like this. Now here, if you call 100 times, always the same output. Why? Because inside that you define the variables and you perform the actions. But whereas in case here we are passing the values at the time of calling. At the time of calling, we are passing these values. Okay. So that means if you are passing different values, according to that, you will get different kind of outputs. Let's say int C is equal to A star B. Multiplication is equal to the output is stored in the C. This is method with parameters and no return type. Method with parameters and no return type. Next, method without parameters and a return type. Public let's say int test diff. Now here int a is equal to 100, int b is equal to minus 200. Sorry, 200. Int c is equal to a minus b. Return c. Return c. Now see, the difference of these two numbers is stored in the c, and whatever the result you are getting, the result I am throwing it. So that's why I am using return statement. And the c is what type? It is integer type. So you should mention the return type is integer. Now here, method without parameters and return type. Method with parameters and return type. Public integer test div. Int a comma int b. Just a second.
This conference will now be recorded.
Int b, and here int c is equal to a by b and return c. Now see, a by b means, let's say a is equal to 100, b is equal to 20. A by b means it is giving the answer is 5. So that means how many times it is going to divide. Suppose if you are going to use percentage, then it will give a remainder. Let's say a is equal to 100, b is equal to 30. It will give a remainder as 10. Percentage, it will give remainder, whereas this slash is giving, that means modulus operator is giving coefficient. Okay. So now here the method with parameters and return type. Okay. So we have different types of methods we can implement. Depends upon your requirement. So I want to test these methods. They are working fine or not. So right click, class. There is a method called, there is a class called test methods. See, in your real time, you are going to implement so many classes. You are going to implement so many classes. But out of all the classes, there has to be one class which contains main method. Wherever the class is containing main method, that class is called main class or primary class. For all the classes, there is one class which contains main method. So that is called main class. For each and every class, you cannot have multiple classes, multiple main classes. Whenever you try to execute a project, if you are going to follow this normal Java project approach, you will have only one main method. Wherever the main method is there, that class is called main class. Okay. So now see, the test methods is the class which contains main method. Okay. Now you define methods under a class called user defined methods. So what you need to do, you need to create an object for the user defined methods class. First, create object for user defined methods class. User defined methods, u is equal to new user defined method. So first you are creating an object for this class. Just a second. Right. So first we are defining object for this class. First we are defining object for this class. User defined methods. Now here u dot, there is a method called test stat. Now here, if you're going to execute this program, this tested, what it returns void. So that means it is not going to return anything. So that's why you can go and directly execute this program. Now see, the output is 30. Now if you call this method n number of times, always you will get the same output. If you call, let's say if you call this method 100 times or 50 times, let's say int I is equal to 1, I is less than or equal to 50, and I plus plus. If you're calling this method 50 times, always the output is same only. Why? Because you did not define the parameters. Always you are getting the same output. Right. Next, u dot test mul. Now here it is asking a comma b. Let's say 10, 5. So different parameters. U dot test mul 80 into -6. So if you call with the different parameters, different output you will get. So first one is 50, 10 into 5. The second one is 20 into 15, 300. The third one is 18 into 60 minus 108. So if you want to change the behavior with respect to the output, so you need to pass different arguments. So at the time of executing a method, if you want to supply the input, you need to pass parameters. Now here, u dot test diff. Now see, the test diff, what it returns integer. Let's say I stored in the variable called int. The output is result. The output is stored in the result variable. Now always you will get -100. Now see, u dot test diff, and here you are calling the method. So this is called calling method. And now see, control and then click. So this is called method definition. This is called method definition. This is called method definition. Right. U dot test diff. Let's say 200, comma 30. So I stored in the variable called result1. The output is stored in the variable called result. Now here, what is output you will get? 200 by 30. That means you will get 6. Yeah, because we used modulus operator. Now see, compare. Now see, there is a method called get method that we used it to launch the browser. So now see, get method, what it is asking, it is asking parameter, but return type is void. So if you are going to pass different parameters, you will see different applications. Now see, compare. If you are passing different parameters, you will see different output. Now the test multiplication, it is returning void only. Now the close command. The close command is also returning void. Once the method gets executed, it is closing the browser. So the method which contains some return type. If it is not returning any value, then the type is void. So similarly, like add method, it is not accepting any argument, and once it is executed, it returns void. Let's say if you take like find element, it is accepting argument. Once that method gets executed, it returns web element is the return type. So similarly, test dev, it is accepting arguments. It is accepting arguments. Once this method gets executed, it returns integer type. So whatever the methods are implemented, it may or may not accept arguments, but it contains return type. If it is not returning any value, the return type of method is void. So why people are going to implement these methods is always divide your task into different pieces, and each piece, if you are implementing with methods, you can use that method wherever and whenever. And using these methods, your code readability will be improved and the code maintenance will be reduced, and the same code we need not to write again and again. So that means code duplication will not happen. So that's why we are going to divide your task into methods. So depends upon our requirement, we are going to implement the methods like this. Any doubts so far?
No doubts.
Right. Now see, in Java, we have 4 types of access modifiers are available. In Java, we have 4 types of access modifiers are available. One is public, Sorry, we'll start like this. One is private, and the second one is default, and third one is protected, and fourth one is public. So we have four types of access modifiers are available in Java. The access modifiers which defines the scope of a member. So see, these access modifiers are applicable for variables, methods, and classes. In Java, we have four types of access modifiers are available. One is private, the second one is default, and third one is protected, and fourth one is public. So we have four types of access modifiers are available in Java. Right. Okay. So now what is the difference between each and everything? So this is very, very important for your interview point of view. Just I'm going to show in the table. If you just remember that, it is easy for you. So here within class, outside class, within package, outside package. So now see. So now suppose if you are going to use private related things, if you are using private related variables or private related methods, the scope of private is within the class. Yes. So I can access within the class if you are mentioning the private. Outside the class, no. And within the package, no, because within the package you may contain one or more number of classes. So whatever you are mentioning the private, those things and all you cannot access outside the class. If outside class itself is not allowed, then within the package is not allowed, and outside package is not allowed. So whatever you are mentioning with the private type, so those things and all you can access it within the class only. Next, default. See, for the default you don't have any keyword called default. For the remaining things like private, protected, public, for remaining things and all you have keyword, but there is no keyword called default. If you are not mentioning anything, internally it is considered as a default. If you are not mentioning anything, internally it is considered as default. Internally it is considered as default. So if it is a default variable or default class, or if it is default methods, so you can access within the class. Outside the class, yes. Within the package, yes. So whatever you mentioned like default type, So those things and all you can access within the class, outside the class, within the package. But outside package is not allowed. In one project, you may contain a number of packages. If you are specifying anything like default type, outside the package is not allowed. But within the package, you can access it anywhere. Protected. Yes. Yes. Within the package. This is also yes. And outside the package is yes only when you are applicable or when it is applicable inheritance. Only inheritance is applicable. So that means only when it contains child class. So we will discuss it about inheritance concept later. So if you are going to use protected, that protected is going to be applicable in outside the package only when you are doing inheritance. That means only when it containing child class. Next, suppose if you are using public, yes, 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 yes. So you can access anywhere. You can access anywhere. Okay. So this is the difference between each and every modifier. Private means it is applicable only within the class. The remaining things and all is not allowed. Default means you can access within the class, you can outside the class, you can access within the package, but outside package is not allowed. Protected within the class is allowed, outside the class is allowed, within the package is allowed, and outside package is also allowed only if inheritance is applicable. If you take like public, anywhere you can access it. So generally in our Selenium automation point of view, most of the guys, people are trying to use public because that is common. And the second one is people are going to use private. So very rarely, very frequently people are going to use these two access modifiers in our Selenium automation. Right. Yeah. Any doubts?
Oh.
Okay. Right. Now see. In Java, if you want to define a constant, there is another type of access modifier is also there. This is access modifier there is non-access modifiers are there. Non-access modifiers like final, static, strict FP, etc. Those are all the non-access modifiers. See, if you want to define constant in Java, if you want to define constant in Java, if you want to define constant in Java, we will use final. See, what is the difference between variable and constant? What is the difference between variable and constant? Constant means once you declare the value, that means once declare the variable and initialize the value, after that you can't change the value. So it is always fixed throughout the program. But when it comes to like variable, the values are keep on changing it. The values are keep on changing it. Okay. So if you want to define constant in Java, we will use final. So how will you do that? Let's say static final a is equal to 10. So that means you define let's say you define a variable, a value is 10. So you defined as a final. Final means this is the constant. This is the constant. Now let's say if you try to change the value, a is equal to 20. Now see, you are getting compilation issue. You are getting compilation issue. Why? Because once it is initialized, because it's a final, once it is initialized, after that you can't change the value. A, the final field test methods dot a cannot be assigned. That means you can't change the value. Okay, so this is about constant. So in Java, if you want to define the constants, we are going to use final variable, final keyword. If you are going to use final method, if you are going to apply the final keyword for methods, that method we cannot override. If you are going to use a final keyword for the class, that class we cannot applicable for inheritance. Okay. So what is override? That you will come to know at the time of inheritance. Okay, so the final is applicable for variables, methods, and classes. If you are going to change or if you are going to apply the final keyword for the variable, then it is treated as a constant. If you are applying final keyword for the methods, then that method you can't override. If you are going to apply final keyword for the class, that class is not suitable to do inheritance. So final is the non-static modifier. Okay.
So, in which scenarios you use this final one constant?
Sorry.
And I mean, for which scenarios usually you use this?
Okay. So which scenario? Let's say example in your let's say you're trying to implement one logic. Let's say you're trying to calculate the area of circle. So the formula is what to say? What is the area for circle? It's a pi r square. The pi value is like 3.14. So if you want to make it like 3.14, at that time you are going to mention as final. The value will not be changed. So later, if you want to change the pi value, it is not going to allow to change the value. So whenever you are trying to implement any scenario, in that scenario, if one particular value is constant and such type of things and all, you are going to make it as okay.
Okay.
Fine. Now see, in the arrays, we are finding this length, right? A dot length. A dot length, which is using to get the size of the array. Now see, this length is it's a final variable. So this is a final variable. Okay. Yeah. Now see, and length length. See,
Okay.
is a variable which is applicable to. So this is one of the interview question. So length versus length, both are same only, but this length is applicable for arrays concept. This is the length variable is applicable to array, but not for strings. Okay, so this length which is applicable for strings. When you want to find out the number of strings, sorry, the number of characters inside the string, at that time we are going to use this length method. But here this is the what it is a variable. Now see, length is the final variable applicable for arrays. Okay, so in Java, to get the or to make it as a constant, we are going to use final. Okay, got it?
Yeah.